Okay, this is our peer review session for the AAPTEL for task 1.
Wonderful. Okay, so I did a review of Kim and Brandon's task 1, and some of the things that I really liked about what they both had said is Kim talked about teacher induction, which is something that my PLC talked about today, and I wasn't sure what our school did, and it turns out our school doesn't really do anything after their first year. So we had a long conversation about how important that type of program is, because I had also researched that if a teacher does like 2 years of induction, they end up being as good of a 4-year teacher. So it really makes a difference. So I liked that point that you had made there. I also like the quote. It said it's easier and more enjoyable to hire a great employee to have to hire not a one and have a person leave. I also like with Brandon really had a lot about demanding time on teachers, and that's something that I think all of us have to deal with, is continually going to fit in professional development, the leadership opportunities for them when time is back for all teachers. And I think, something to be said for giving teachers a feel of leadership and of value within a school. And I've heard over and over this whole week, as I've been talking to teachers, about how it would be really nice if the principal just said that they acknowledge that I have a difficult class this year. That type of just leadership from the leaders, of telling them, I see what you're doing and you're trying. And but everyone was writing was, how can we build up that feeling of being a professional, but also being valued in school. So that's a lot of what I had seen, and really good insights, and how important it is for teachers to be seen as leaders, not just as the principal being the leader.
All right, sounds good, Heather. Thank you.
All right, and to go off of that, I liked how Linsey had the quote in there about to upgrade teacher quality, schools need to be just more holding the teacher accountable, actually giving the teachers more control. Because if you're wanting to hold us accountable, let us have control of how we need to be accountable. I really like that, and I thought a lot of your research was based on that, and it really spoke to me, because even I took some of your research and I was talking to my principal today, and they were like, that's really good insights on things. So we had a whole conversation just based on that, on what I need to do for task 2. And for Heather, I really liked how you brought your personal experiences into it. I've been a teacher that I've basically been moved around in my district many times. I've never been interviewed, but I've seen different leadership styles. So actually showing how you have been recruited, and the 2 different ways that you saw recruitment, that's different for every school. And really, when you're recruitment, if the teacher that you're recruiting is not a good fit for your school, you're going to be back in the same situation in just a few years. So, or even a year. So I think that was a really good part to bring back, is when we are principals and we are recruiting, we need to make sure that they are a good fit for our school. And I just thought that was something that really spoke to me, as being moved around and just saying, your district saying, oh, you're at this school, now you're at this school, because I never got to pick which school I was at. So that was something that just spoke to me, like I was interviewing. Both of them had a lot of research that I thought was really good. And I can't say anymore. I was really impressed with everything that I learned just from reading your papers, based on what I'd already learned. But going back to the induction thing, I know for my county, the inductions, we have your first year, you have to meet every month with induction staff, but then they drop it when you're a BT2, they drop it down to every other month. And being a mentor, I'm getting to see what my mentees are going through every other month, because I both have 2 second-year teachers. So it's really impressive to see that they have upped what my county's doing compared to when I entered, and they weren't doing anything with BT2s. You lost all support after your first year, so I've been there.
Okay, so I reviewed Kim and Brandon's, and I thought you both, with the plethora of resources that you had cited, it was very clear to me that it was not just you were just looking, to fill in some information, but really looking to find sources that you could use later, and that your teachers could use as they progress their skills. So I just wanted to say that to start. Kim, I'm going to do yours first.
Okay.
So I really liked one of the quotes that you said. You said, it is not enough to recruit and hire great teachers. We have to keep them. And this kind of goes on with what Brandon was saying, that, we do this really great job of, going through this very, what in my county anyway, it's a pretty long process to get hired. I mean, there's multiple people that kind of touch on each individual before they're placed. But then you're right, Brandon, there's not a lot of support. And I do feel like it's in my county getting a little bit better. But we don't always offer things, what I feel like, especially my school, in-house. So that's something that I've had conversations with my principal and our school improvement team and our instructional leadership team to, work on that for next year as we're getting, new teachers in the building. Let's see. And for Brandon's, I really liked your examples of the survey. And it was good to see how you adapted what you were already using and then made it your own. So that was nice. My school doesn't really use anything other than just the state rubric, which it's hard for the teachers in my building. So we're looking to supplement kind of what we have. So I really liked what you had because that could be something that we could do, as we work through finding different ways to evaluate the teachers other than just that North Carolina rubric that we have to follow. And just the examples that you provided were really helpful. And I think the questions that you were asking your teachers through the surveys will help you as you move on to your next tasks.
Okay, well, I reviewed for Heather and Linsey, and both of you guys had really great stuff. All of your references and all of that. I enjoyed looking at the surveys and the checklist, and all of those things were really great. I'm kind of interested to see as everybody's survey data starts rolling in and everybody starts looking at the things that people say in their different schools, and it kind of made me wonder if like different schools are going to get vastly different results and things. So just looking at the different questions that we're all going to ask our faculty was very interesting. Heather, I think Brandon mentioned this, but I had written in my notes the way that you described the two different types of ways that you had been recruited. I thought that was very interesting, and the two ways that you mentioned were basically the complete opposite from each other, and that was really interesting to me. They're two totally different ways to recruit, or really to not recruit. The one example, was a not recruitment example. So I also wrote, Heather, that in yours, how you included the South Carolina teaching standards in your research. And I think I wrote to you that I was going to go back and look at that as well, and I did, to see kind of how that lined up with the checklist and the survey and stuff that I had. Let's see. Okay. Then for Linsey, I had written about how in the beginning, in the best practice section, you immediately tied in about professional development. And it was kind of like how those two things went hand in hand, and how you really couldn't talk about best practice without talking about professional development, and how those two things were really intertwined with each other. Your research to me showed leadership. So I also wrote about your research in the leadership section, because a good leader doesn't just talk about random things that they want to talk about. They talk about things that are research based, and they share those things with their faculty. So I learned a lot from reading y'all's things this week, and I've learned a lot from doing some observations this week and from having some survey results come in this week also. So it's definitely been a time of kind of just tying it all together. So hearing you guys talk about resources for first-year teachers kind of made me think about that. I can't really remember the last time that my school got a first-year teacher. And we get a lot of applicants to our school that are transfers from other schools within the district. And that seems to be kind of where, I mean, not kind of, it is where we fill most of our positions. I think you guys have, some of you, have read my parts, and we've discussed about how my school has very, very little turnover. So when we do have an open position, it almost always is filled by someone at another school in our district who wants to transfer to our school. So we don't really have that where someone in our school is mentoring or going through a program with a first-year teacher. So listening to you guys talk about that, though, that is a concern that I don't really see in my daily, teaching life. But it is definitely a concern, and I can't really imagine being a first-year teacher and just kind of, you get that 1 year and then, okay, you're good, that kind of thing. So listening to you guys talk about that, that is something I think I want to ask my principal about too, and just say, what is the plan and how long do they receive support and things. So that's something that I'm going to look into a little bit further just from listening to y'all's conversation tonight. So thank you for bringing that up.
And I'll agree, like, even when I was writing, I was like, I can't talk about one without talking about the other. And I'm like, just showing how all 5 of these prompts were interconnected. I was like, how can I make sure that I'm talking about the one without talking about another?
Mm-hmm.
And that was just something that was a huge issue with me when I was writing.
Mm-hmm. It was difficult for me to start, Brandon, to be honest, because it was difficult for me to think about them in 5 separate categories and to just focus on one and write about one, because I too feel like they're all, they're all one big intertwined thing. So it was hard for me to think about them in separate ways, which I don't think that's the way we're supposed to write. But in reality, I think you do have to think about them all as one interconnected thing that are all happening at the same time, for sure.
I think I was surprised is I thought that with the AAPTEL that I'd have a connecting that with what we're doing with the AAPTEL, but I found that the weaknesses that my school has, the teachers are actually acknowledging it too as areas of weakness, like in their survey and what they've been talking to us. So it's kind of like, not only are we seeing that as an academic concern, but the teachers are saying they're not getting the training on that. They're getting training on other things. They want more training stuff. So that was been pretty interesting to see how they keep together. PLC.
Yeah, I'm interested to know if across the board, just teachers in general feel like the professional development they're getting is not really addressing the issues that they feel like they are having, because that is a reoccurring conversation at my school. And, it's hard for people to sit through a professional development about mindfulness when they are like, well, how do I teach this specific standard? Or how do I, do this or do that? And I think that I feel like that probably is a reoccurring theme across the board.
Yeah, I've started some of my surveys back, and I think 13 of the teachers that have done it are all saying basically the same thing, that, they're going through professional development on what the principal is deciding or what, the district is mandating, and it's not necessarily linking to their needs, either to meet their students' needs or to where they need to be able to grow their skills. So it's going to be interesting to see where this leads.
Mm-hmm. Our district has made, a little bit of a push to have teacher-led professional development. Like on our professional development days, they're led by teachers. But in reality, the teachers are presenting the material that they are given that the district decided. Like the teachers they're leading it, but they didn't choose the topic. They aren't planning it. They are just leading it. Well, that's not really what people are saying. People are not saying I need to hear it from a teacher. People are saying I need it to be something that applies to me as a teacher. That's what people are saying. So maybe we've tried to make a step in the right direction, but I think we kind of missed the boat a little bit on making sure it actually was what teachers need growth on and what they need to hear and things like that.
Yeah, and like I've gotten all my surveys back. So one of the things I did do with my principal was I shared the survey with her. And she went through the comments and stuff and looked at it with me today. And she's like, the professional development, our county decides what you're going to do during your staff development days. We have no control over it. Basically, they want all of us to become national board teachers. So that's our professional development for the county this year. But we also offer in-house things like anybody that needed ELA credit, they're doing an ELA thing. Well, it was provided by the county, but it was taught by a teacher. Well, the teacher that's teaching it said, I know what our school needs, and I'm going to give you what our school needs from it. I'm not making you do this whole thing that the county's doing. So she's just kind of revamping it to fit our school and not telling the county that she's actually changing it that much so that we still get the credit that the county's going to give us for it. But I really enjoy that professional development because it helps me bring stuff into the classroom that I need to use for my classroom and not something that one of the more affluent schools needs. So I do like it when the county does provide us some things, but it does need to be in-house because it needs to be tailored to your students and what your students and teachers need.
Well, going and sitting in a professional development and getting nothing from it and leaving, that is the same to me as going to sit in a planning session where all people do is sit around and talk and they don't actually plan, and then you leave the planning session and go back to your room and plan. Like that's what sitting through professional development that does not apply feels like. You sit through it and then you leave and you're like, well, okay, now let me go back and do my thing or find what I'm looking for and figure out the answers to these issues. So, you know, of course people resent that because they feel like that's a big waste of time and no one wants to sit through something that's a waste of time.
Right. And I think a lot of times through, you know, like our district professional development, you know, whatever they're presenting, if it's from the district, a lot of times we're not given resources, you know, to be able to take back to our classrooms and, you know, or to pass on to other teachers. I mean, it's just like, here's information via PowerPoint that I could easily read by myself. You know, nothing to go with it.
Yeah. Well, we've made go ahead, Heather. I'm sorry.
You finish your sentence.
No. Go ahead.
Say at our school, we were actually talking about that today, that we have a lot of district mandates of you have to use words their way or whatever, but they never give training on the district level for teachers. And one of on my PLC had talked to the 5th grade teachers and they said, we would love to go in the summer and have a voluntary session about learning words our way. You know, they're begging for more training, but they're not getting it on that district level, even through local. We have been doing a little bit more with like doing teachers lead teachers sort of EDs, and you can pick and choose which one you want to differentiate, because in the past, like I've had to go to a STEAM one and I don't do STEAM in my programs. So some of them is waste. They're getting a little bit better, but the district does keep mandating things and then doesn't really show you how to do it, which is a little frustrating for teachers. So
yeah. So I think we can wrap up because we're getting close on our time. But what I was going to say is, so we have to remember when we become assistant principals or principals, what it was like to be a teacher. And if the professional development does not match what our teachers need, we have to take that to our principals meetings and we have to say, hey, this is not what my people need. You know, they need this, this, and this. And, you know, that's just important. And sometimes I know it's out of the principal's hands and things like that, like what Brandon was saying, you know, it gets handed down from the district and stuff, but being able to voice that and being able to go to your staff and say, you know, what do you guys need? And we're going to work this out and we're going to try to get you what you feel like you need professional development on.
And I mean, like, especially seeing a principal like I have, like, we only have a few staff members, and I know which staff, like I didn't put names on my thing,
Mhm.
but knowing my staff members and knowing the staff that I work with, there are 2 negative people, and they were the only ones that gave negative comments throughout the entire survey. So, like, and my principal is she's more managerial. She's like, I'm wanting all of you to be leaders. So, I mean, like everything else in the survey, it's going to be hard for me to do my AAPTEL because there's no really other gaps other than the professional development for task 2. I mean, everybody's like, yes, you give us this, you give us this, you give us this. We have ways to spend our budget. She tells us, make a wish list because if I have the money, I'm going to order it for you. So, I mean, when I was talking with her today, she's like, I expect all of you to be leaders. And she says that helps me because I'm not having to check behind you as much. And it also it makes your life a lot happier here in the school because I'm empowering you to be the leaders that I want all of you to be. So that's something that even when I become an AP and I become a principal, like I really like her style of leadership. And I mean, everybody's happy. We don't have much turnover. And when teachers do have to leave our school because their students drop, they're really upset about it. So that's something that I just really like about seeing this management style that I have right now. I want to carry it over and practice it when I become a principal.
That's great. I'm not sure everyone feels that way, so that's awesome. I'm glad. I mean, really, I'm glad that you're having that experience. And I mean, everybody should, at least in some point in their career, you know, feel like they've worked for a principal that is that way. And if they haven't, then when they're a principal, they should be that way. I mean, really.
Yeah, she's one of the principals. If we don't have a sub and she is able to, she will come sub in your classroom just so you can get a break if you need it.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. All right, you guys, I think we hit all the points that we need to hit, and we had a great conversation. So, everybody good?
I'm good.
I'm good.
All right, y'all have a great rest of the week.
You too.
Bye.
All right, bye.